Hey listeners, welcome to 10x Growth Strategies podcast. This is your host, Preethy Padmanabhan, technology executive, investor, and board member. Today, we are featuring the book, Pitch Your Potential, with the author, Vicki Johnson. You're going to have a treat because we're going to share the formula for winning dream jobs, awards, and elite opportunities. Vicki is going to share the Match Me formula and how it can be used to stand out in any competition. So, do tune in and listen to this episode. Welcome, Vicki, to the podcast.
Thank you, Preethy. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Wonderful. Tell us about yourself, your journey, and what got you to write this book, Pitch Your Potential.
Yes, I think I should start from where I am now, and I'll work backwards a little bit. But I'm a founder and director of an organization called ProFellow, and we are a platform that helps people find competitive fellowships, graduate programs with funding, business accelerators, and other types of merit-based opportunities that can advance your career, whether you're a scholar, a student, a professional, an executive. And as we were doing this, the mission behind it was to help people find these opportunities first and foremost, because throughout my career, I found that a lot of these opportunities were hidden and sort of word of mouth, which I thought was somewhat too exclusive. But I realized too, in the course of this work, I really need to help people win these opportunities because they are competitive. They often have, unclear and secretive forms of admissions processes. And I had always had a lot of success from early in my life getting into these competitive programs using certain types of human-centered strategies like storytelling and becoming mutually beneficial. So several years ago, I started to teach people how to become a more competitive candidate, really leveraging their own unique lived experience as their greatest competitive advantage. And when I first started this, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know if it would work for other people. It was really an experiment because it had worked for me. But as I started to teach it to people, and people from all different backgrounds, people with different types of challenges or gaps on their resume or other things, I realized that it really does work for people of all different types of backgrounds. So how this all started is I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, and I went to city public schools. My parents, they had limited resources when we were growing up, but I did have their unique skills. I had access to a father who was a great storyteller because he was a Lutheran minister. So he was a preacher, a writer, a speaker. And then my mother was great at attention to detail. So despite having limited resources, our house was always beautifully designed and organized. And I didn't really appreciate these two very specific skills until I was older. And also because I realized that I was using them myself. So my first big competition was getting into college. So like many people, I was a hardworking student. I wanted to go to a top school. I received a lot of advice that I wouldn't really be able to get into a top school based on my academic background. I had really top grades. I was in a lot of extracurriculars, but I was going to this struggling city high school that was closing down, literally. And I also had a 1250 SAT score, which wasn't a bad score, but it wasn't really considered competitive enough. Now, this was 1997, so it's even more competitive than it was then. But what I did was I really became obsessed with my application. I wanted to go to Cornell University. It's a long story, but it was my dream school to go there, high above Cayuga's waters. And I worked very hard on figuring out what is the story that I'm going to put into my personal statement. And I did develop a story that I think was the thing that gave me an edge over other candidates. This is all in my book, Pitch Your Potential, sort of the background. But moving forward, I also use the same strategies that I used for Cornell to get into nationally competitive fellowships. I've traveled the world. I've done a Fulbright in New Zealand. I went to a top graduate school in the UK. And I did my PhD in my mid-30s on full funding. And all of these things really came from figuring out how to pitch my future potential. Because the crux of this is that how you pitch your story of the future is more important than the record of your past. So if you can become a great storyteller, that is what inspires selection committees to choose you and invest in you.
What a timely, valuable insight you're sharing here, because I'm hearing that top schools, 50% of their graduating class do not have a job from really top schools nowadays. With the competition and AI taking over jobs in some cases, and even getting into college is such a tough situation right now. And many people come to me because my son had actually gotten into a very good school a few years ago, and many parents are worried. So this is a perfect episode for all of us. I want to get right into it. The Match Me formula is central to your methodology. Could you walk us through each element and share why it's so effective?
Yes. Okay. So Match Me has 7 letters. So each letter represents one of the 7 elements of a winning application. So the first M stands for memorable. So you need to have a memorable application. A stands for aligns with the organization's mission. So whether that's an employer, a university, a business accelerator, you need to be able to align with their organizational goals. The T stands for timely. So how do you add timeliness and urgency to your application? C stands for capitalize on their unique benefits. So capitalize is an action word, and it's to express how you're going to take their unique benefits and capitalize on them to create something in the future that helps them advance their mission and yours. H stands for highly specific. We live in a world full of jargon and platitudes. We're actually not very good writers and speakers. And I think it's getting a little bit worse, unfortunately, with AI, even though that can be a tool that you can leverage. But we need to learn how to express ourselves with high detail and do that in a small space. The next M stands for mutually beneficial. So you need to express how your selection is beneficial to them and also beneficial to you. And then finally, the last E stands for elegant. And elegant is the word I use for the careful balance of self-confidence and humility. So it's the tone of your application. How do you speak about yourself? And even how do you think about your selectors and your competitors can make a huge difference on your ability to get selected. Now, I put it into this formula, and the word formula, of course, has all sorts of connotations, but it is a formula because if you can figure out how to apply all 7 of these elements, I promise you're going to have exponentially more success. Match Me is easy to remember, and also Match Me, as the 2 words, really represents how do you match your personal mission for social impact on the mission of these opportunities that offer you unique resources, networks, and opportunities that you can't get anywhere else. So you're matching yourself to the perfect opportunities for you, which at the outset, like you said, a lot of people are going for elite schools and want to do this or that. But it is also important that you figure out what is your personal mission, what are your goals, and figure out what are the best opportunities to achieve those goals. Keep your goals high, but you have to really think strategically about what it is that you want versus what society wants.
Fantastic formula right there. I can see this applicable throughout your life. You can actually not just use it for your college applications or your first job, but you can keep applying it. And it's just so power-packed wisdom out there. And what I loved about it was you're so putting the audience in perspective, right? Oftentimes I tell my mentees that always position yourself based on what the audience want, not just based on what you think that you need to be talking about. Always have the audience in mind, be it if it's a customer or an employer. So I can see that is very central to your methodology. Let's get to some of the mindset challenges while people are working through their Match Me formula and other ways to get through. Many people might face self-doubt. There's also gatekeepers, skepticism. How do you help such people overcome these challenges? If you can even share through examples, that would be great.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the mindset is actually the biggest challenge that you're going to have, because even if you get really good at these 7 elements, you will face mindset challenges because of 3 main things. Number 1 is fear of failure, fear of rejection. From a young age, we're taught to almost be afraid of rejection because it's something we should be embarrassed of, or it's something that we should try to avoid. And the problem is this fear of failure and rejection creates a lot of subconscious things like procrastination, like not telling people about your goals, like not putting in your highest effort into your application. So in the first chapter of my book, I talk a lot about how we need to embrace the fear of failure and rejection, because that fear that you have is a signal that what you're pursuing is something that you really, really want. So the stronger your fear, that's a signal that you should be listening to, and you should lean into it emotionally towards the possibility of success, not the possibility of rejection. Secondly is comparison culture. Now, I'm going to age myself, but when I was growing up, there was no social media. Internet was new. And so I didn't have this social media that basically put everything about my life online, right? We go online now, there's social media, everything from the way we look to our job titles, to our schools, to what we're doing or not doing is online for other people to look at and compare and comment on. And it's creating this very deep comparison culture that frankly is creating a negative culture, because we look at what other people are achieving and we wonder, well, why are they getting that and I'm not getting that? Or what did they do that I didn't get? And we think it's unfair, or there's a lack of equity. And really, the fact of the matter is that the comparison is creating a negative mindset about other people in the competition. So what we need to do is appreciate other people are also deserving of opportunity, also are striving and working hard. Let's try to figure out together how we bring each other up versus, figuring out how we compare. And then finally is gatekeepers. I do say that, one thing I noticed throughout my whole life, there was always someone telling me that the goal that I had would be out of reach. And no matter how successful I've become, I had someone saying, oh, Vicki, just be careful. That's a really big goal. Just so you know, there's a really high failure rate. This started with college admissions. Then when I was applying to fellowships, apparently my GPA wasn't good enough. Then when I went out into the workforce, oh, Vicki, you're not qualified for that leadership role. You're up against people with more work experience. When I did my PhD in my mid-30s, maybe I'm too old at this point. And then even when I founded my company as a female founder with no business experience, that was out of reach, unrealistic. What are you doing? Stay with your government career track. Some of it is deliberate. A lot of it's well-intentioned. It's your friends, it's your family, just trying to help you not face the disappointment and the failure. But really, most of the opinions you get are from people that don't know anything about the goals that you have or how to achieve them. So we shouldn't listen to gatekeepers. We should listen to people that support our goals 100% and say, they don't tell us about the failure rates. They say, you know what, go for that goal. And I'm going to be here rooting for you. Even if you face a failure, I'm going to, encourage you to try again, improve the effort, and really prompt you to try to go after that undeterred. So you need to find those people in your life, and they are the minority of the people that you'll come across in your studies, in your professional life, and even in your own family. So those are the three major things that impact our mindset. And if we can recognize that, then you will really unleash the power of the Match Me formula as you go into extremely competitive competitions.
Great inputs out there. I can totally resonate to that competitive thought process. I had to really work through those myself and not compare myself to others, rather to my own growth. It's like golf. I started thinking of that, my career as like golf, compare yourself to yourself. And also the whole thing of gatekeepers, and more like people who are well-wishers, but they actually are not giving us the best advice. I still remember how I had to surround myself with people who believed me more than I believed in myself. And that really changed the game. So appreciate all those insights that you have created as a perfect thing for all the folks who are up and coming in their career. Let us talk about goals now. You mentioned earlier that is one of the first things that one has to be clear about. How can our listeners clearly define their goals and identify the perfect fit opportunities?
Oh, sure. Well, as you're growing up, you're going to get a lot of career advice, and a lot of the stuff even that I see online is around How do you pick a career that's secure or is going to pay well? Often our career goals are centered around what our families want for us. If you grew up in a family that wanted you to become a doctor or a lawyer or go into the military or become an academic, sometimes your goals are sort of pushed on you and you don't really know why you should want those goals beyond the fact that it'll make you look successful to other people. So your family will be proud of you. Maybe you'll make enough money for that security that you're looking for. But really, what we need to do is also set goals around what problems do we want to solve. I talk a lot in the book about the personal mission and thinking about what are the big social problems. And there are thousands of social problems right now that need solutions. What are the problems that you want to put your unique perspective, skills, and talents toward? And your personal mission may change over the course of your life. In fact, sometimes you might have multiple missions at the same time. You might care about the environment. You might also care about education. You might care about health. You might care about all sorts of things. But you need to get focused on a goal so that you can choose opportunities and career tracks that help you achieve the personal mission for social impact on others. And that will help you to find opportunities that are both aligned with your goals and personally fulfilling. So you hear about the midlife crisis. A lot of us start to question our career tracks in that kind of age 35 to 45 that you hear about that. That's because we're pursuing careers that we were told were the right careers for us, but they're not maybe as personally fulfilling as we had thought or hoped they would be, or maybe we didn't think about fulfillment as much as we thought about money or success or other things. So, this is why it's important to think about what are the problems that I want to solve. And honestly, if you don't know what you want to do because you just have so many interests, then start focusing in on the opportunities that look interesting. What problems are these organizations solving, whether it's a company, a nonprofit, a government agency, or even if you think maybe I'll found my own company or own organization to solve that problem, you will have a much more fulfilling career and you'll even have more success getting into the opportunities that you need to achieve the resources and networks that you need to achieve your goals.
Wow. No, I think we both met through the High Power Network, and you've talked about how we go through the midlife crisis, or actually it could be multiple crises that happen every 20 years or so of our life, and either second act or third act that everybody go through to reinvent themselves. I think these are very crucial tips that you're giving for us to be able to be successful in doing that. Tell us some common mistakes that people make when they are selecting these jobs or, when we go for awards or fellowships to target.
Yes, I think the first thing that people do is they don't spend enough time looking at the organization's mission and their immediate goals within the next 12 months. So the reason it's important to really deeply understand the mission of the organization, like I said, whether it's an employer, a university, an award, or anything else that has some sort of competitive process, it's important to understand the mission. And sometimes people will go and look at the static website, they'll look for a mission statement or what the program's about or what the opportunity's about, and they think they have it. Okay, I get it. This is what they're doing. But oftentimes the mission and the goals, especially the goals of the next 12 months, because the world is rapidly changing, you're not going to just find that on a website, on the static website, which is probably at least 6 months out of date in terms of, information. Really, you should look deeper. You should be looking at press releases. You should be looking at what they're presenting at conferences. You should look at who they've selected in the past. You should look at their leadership and what are the pieces and articles that they're writing about online. Because if you can understand deeply what their mission is, because sometimes the mission statement is very vague and full of jargon, you really want to find out what is this organization trying to achieve by offering this opportunity. The opportunity is an investment. It's not going to be a reward for what you've done in the past. They're going to pick someone that they're investing in to achieve an outcome in the future. So if you know what outcomes they're really trying to achieve, then you can align your story and your application around showing them exactly how you are going to come in and help them achieve those goals, their immediate goals and priorities. And this is true for any opportunity, even for universities. People say, well, that's not like an employer. Universities have a training mission, right? So they're training the next generation of business leaders, scholars, people who are working in different areas. So Are your career goals aligned with their training mission? And what are you going to do with their degree and their resources to fully make the most of that opportunity? That's what you've got to put into the application. But also, oftentimes we're so busy writing about our past, our background, our skills, we don't write enough about the future. What does the future look like if you get selected? And really, so the mission research is bringing it all back. The mission research is the thing that really helps you stand heads and shoulders above other candidates, even people that, seemingly have a better resume than you do.
That I think that's perfect. And especially the mission research is not only important to getting the job, it also is important to find out if you'll be actually happy or be successful.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. That's the other part of it.
Yeah. And so like oftentimes you go to a company, you think you'll be happy, and then you go there, you're completely misaligned with what they are looking for. That is great. Such an important piece to think about. I think this is a good point where we should talk more about the pitch and storytelling piece. You brought that up earlier as something that's very important. In my line of work, I advise a lot of startups. I'm part of venture funds, and I get pitched a lot in terms of startup companies. And I keep asking them, tell me your 2-minute, 3-minute elevator pitch. So tell us your insights on what makes a pitch memorable versus a forgettable one.
Yes. I mean, I have a whole chapter on this. And oftentimes what makes it memorable can be a series of things. But the most effective way to be memorable is to leverage your network for referrals. So this is before you've even written anything or done anything. When you're applying for a job, when you're applying to a university, when you're applying to a fellowship or award, you should be looking into your network to see if there's someone who's connected to someone related to the hiring team or the selection committee. And a lot of people don't do this to say, LinkedIn is a very powerful platform, not because it's got a job board, not because it's got a social media feed of stuff. It's because it's the only way that you can fully see your network. So I just wrote a post the other day about how I have over 15 years that I've used LinkedIn. I'm connected to more than 7,700 people, right? People I've met through school, through work, through social stuff, through conferences, through everything, business events, traveling. And through those 7,700 people, they have on average 750 connections. And the people in my network often have a lot more than that. So I did the math. I said, wow, I have mutual connections to more than 5.7 million people. So if I was going to apply to something, there's a high likelihood I'm probably have a mutual connection to someone related to that organization, to that university. And if I can get that person to introduce me and I'm prepared with some specific questions, you start to get your name and face in front of selectors in a way that makes you memorable. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to make mutual connections, especially because as things become more competitive and crazy with AI and one-click job tools, you'll see on LinkedIn, it says, there's thousands of applications for one position. These opportunities are going to start going offline more and more. I think it's just inevitable. It may come back, but I think organizations are going to start to do things again more by word of mouth and through referral systems if they have not already. So your network is extremely important. And when you get a mutual contact, you are immediately more memorable than someone who didn't have a mutual contact and just submitted their, digital application. So those human connections, the network, the referrals make a big, big difference. And then beyond that, when you're in your written part of your cover letter, your essays, your pitch deck, you should be incorporating personal anecdotes with detail. Anecdotes are memories from your life. They could be from the far past. They could even be the more immediate present that, kind of give a little story about how you're connected to the selection committee. And the detail is what's going to help them sort of stick in their minds. So now they know your name and face because they met you before or were introduced before the application. And then they hear these little anecdotes that help really stick you in their mind, and they remember you far beyond after they've met you or read your application. So in the book, it's hard to explain over a podcast, but in the book I give some really clear case studies of how people became more memorable. and using, ideas, using little anecdotes. And, it's going to be hard to come up with those things with AI. AI tools could help you refine it, but really these are from your brain. And you need to be able to use your memories and your lived experiences to connect with other humans who are making these very subjective decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, all the jobs I got in the business side were all through referrals, right? Either they were jobs that were published or not published in most cases, because I got to the hiring team even before they published the job, and it made me a much better candidate for the job. And they were mutually introduced by somebody. So perfect, great inputs for everyone on whether they're pitching themselves for a job or for a startup or to pitch themselves to a VC. It's all very good inputs out there. We talked about the storytelling, right? Basically, you talked about having anecdotes and other things. Many people struggle to highlight their unique story. How do you help them express themselves powerfully, be it for their applications, their interviews? Can you share some success stories?
Yes. And I talk a lot about the story, but when I talk about the story, it's not the story of your life, although that is part of it. It's what I call the application story, which has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So when you're pitching yourself in an application, in a cover letter, in an interview, in a pitch, what you are telling is a story where the beginning is you up until now, your background. What are some key things from your skill set, your background? What are the things that motivate you? What are the things that you care about that kind of explain why are you here applying to this opportunity? The end of the story is in the future, beyond the opportunity. So it's the future outcome. If you get selected for this, what is that kind of long-term impact that's going to happen? Maybe you're going to enter a leadership position where you can impact more people because now you have more resources and things that you can leverage. Or your company is solving problems at a much larger scale, or you're doing research that is going to save lives and change the world. You think of that kind of future outcome. The middle of the story is that hook, which is how this opportunity is uniquely positioned to help you achieve that goal. So sometimes you probably have heard of the hero's journey, and people talk a lot about, having a hero in your story. The biggest mistake people make is they make themselves the hero. I'm the person that's going to come in and save the day because I bring in all these things. That's actually the wrong approach. The hero is actually the selectors. The selectors have the resources, tools, platform, and networks that you need to achieve your future impact goal. And so what you want to do is show them how you're going to capitalize on their unique benefits and their networks to get from where you are now to where you want to be in the future. And of course, that future goal should be something that they care about too. Yes, we want to conserve more in the environment. Yes, we want to create technologies that create efficiencies in how we transport things. Yes, we want to do all the research that cures cancer. They want that outcome just as much as you do. So you have to show them how their unique benefits are going to help them get to that goal. So anytime you're applying to something, create a little storyline. You'll notice that only one part of that story has to do with your past. The other two have to do with the future. So there's a future-facing emphasis, which is what I teach. And so when people have imposter syndrome and they lack confidence, you're going to develop more confidence the more specific and visual your future outcome story is. Now, here's the thing. Anyone can tell a great story of the future. It's in the future. It's fortune telling. There's no... It hasn't happened yet. So if you can really create this beautiful visual picture of what would happen if you get selected, that is the thing that creates an emotional connection with selectors. It's not your grades. It's not your job title. That stuff is great. That's evidence that you're a hard worker and you're smart. But what they need is that really compelling future vision. So that's why I tell people don't spend enough time on the future vision. They only work on the past. You're going to be more confident the more you work on the future position, such that you're going to be excited to tell selectors, this is how I visualize the future with your collaboration.
That is so great. Oftentimes, I see that in interviews, we tend to like focus on proving ourselves, trying to say, I did A, B, and C, and that's why I can come and do this in your job. And the audience is left gaping because they cannot connect that past with what future they are building. So instead of trying to prove yourself, this is almost like moving into an exploratory mode where you're exploring the future with them. And that is certainly the best way to actually get their attention. In fact, sometimes they say you're more successful if you get to have your customer or your interviewer actually speak more than what you speak. So most likely, if you're able to map to the future for them, they'll end up sharing that joint vision and also talk a lot more in the interview, which means it's actually going to be a more successful interview than if you were trying to talk and prove yourself the whole time. So this is great.
And let me, you asked for an example too. And sorry, I haven't given any yet. I actually do have an example of an entrepreneur in my book who his name is Craig. He got on both Y Combinator and Shark Tank. So two of the most competitive business accelerators. I don't know if Shark Tank would consider themselves an accelerator, but they are in a way. They're both investor platforms where you can get investment. And so Craig was first on Shark Tank many years ago in one of the early seasons for a product. And he really connected with the Selectors because he understood that Shark Tank is really more about entertainment than it is about, getting an investment. So there was sort of that was a unique opportunity, but he wanted to get on that show and he did it. And his full story's in there. But then many years later, he wanted to get into Y Combinator, which I think some people would agree is maybe a more serious and globally known business accelerator in Silicon Valley. They're behind Airbnb and Reddit and some of the biggest companies in the world, billion-dollar unicorn companies. And so that what he did to connect with the Selectors there was that he looked at how the Y Combinator investor groups, invest in companies. And he noticed that, they're actually relatively risk adverse. He was looking at their portfolio of companies and then looking at the portfolio of other kind of competitor venture groups. And he figured out a way to say how his company was uniquely different because it wasn't like it wasn't in the Y Combinator portfolio yet, as you might call it. So he sort of honed in on that. He also got a former Y Combinator, participant to be an early investor in his company. And so he mentioned that in his pitch, showing that he understood the power of the investor network and how all of this whole ecosystem works. So by doing that background research, that deep mission research, understanding what each of those platforms was looking for, which was different, he was able to link to that and get to that outcome. And he really talked about the future. He was thinking about his Selectors. What did they want? And he was able to make a pitch that, was very aspirational and got him into one of the most competitive business accelerators, Y Combinator. It's like less than 1% get into that particular program. So his story's in the book, and there's many others like it that for people who went to top graduate schools or won fellowships or did other things that were extremely competitive. But again, telling that story of the future.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that example. It is perfect example on getting into Shark Tank and getting into Y Combinator, two very difficult ones to get into. So we are almost towards the end of our discussion here. I would love for you to share with the audience about when your book is coming out, what are some bonuses, offers for pre-orders, and how do you typically support the audience who purchase your book?
Yes, absolutely. So the book is coming out physically in January 2026. The pre-order is on now. And if you create a pre-order, there is going to be some listening sessions just for people who have pre-ordered the book in the September to November timeframe. So the earlier you get your pre-order, the better, because I'm going to do a series of them where I'm going to be able to share in-depth insights into the Match Me formula before you can get the book in your hands. Because I know a lot of people need this information right now. And so what I want to do is really unlock that for people in this kind of very fall, season of job applications, graduate school applications, and award applications. It's happening right now. Also, I'd love for people to find us at ProFellow.com, which is our big free database and platform for opportunities. So if you're looking for a professional fellowship, a graduate school, funding for school, even paid summer fellowships and other things. That's a great platform too. But I think you'll probably have it in the show notes where you can find my book and pre-order it. And on that page, you'll also see information about how to, access your bonus, which is these listening sessions with me through the fall of 2025.
Thank you so much. That is great support for the audience. Is there any final piece of advice you'd like to share in this episode?
I just will emphasize again that the story of your future is more important than the story of your past. So become a great storyteller. Figure out how this means becoming a good writer, a good speaker, and building your confidence. But what I'll say is that if you follow the Match Me formula, no matter how low your confidence is now, it will help you develop your self-confidence because you're going to feel yourself really preparing at a very, very high level for the things that you really, really want. And when you follow this formula, you'll build your self-confidence. You'll exponentially increase your opportunity of achieving success, and you're going to become a great storyteller of the future.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Vicki, for joining us today. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. Look out in the show notes for the links to pre-order Vicki's book. And thank you for joining us.